The laughter in that restaurant still echoes in my mind. The clinking glasses, the waiter frozen mid-step, and his words, "You're not good enough for the life I'm building." He thought humiliating me in public would break me. He had no idea I'd spend the next 3 weeks building the storm that would destroy everything he worked for. Her name was Elena Foster, a 28-year-old creative director at a boutique marketing firm in Boston. She was warm, clever, fiercely loyal, and quietly ambitious, the kind of woman who remembered everyone's birthday and never forgot her worth, even when others tried to bury it. She had built herself from scratch after losing her parents in her early 20s. Her kindness was mistaken for weakness, her patience for passivity, but behind those soft eyes was a woman who knew how to strike when it mattered most. And when Jason Lang, her polished, high-flying entrepreneur boyfriend, humiliated her in front of a packed restaurant, Elena didn't collapse. She calculated. The clinking of champagne glasses, the hum of conversation, and the candlelight flickering across white linen. It should have been the perfect evening. Elena Foster smoothed her burgundy dress, the silk cool under her fingers. She had curled her hair, chosen a necklace he once complimented, and even worn heels that pinched her toes, because tonight was special. Or so she thought. Across the table, Jason Lang adjusted his cufflinks. He looked like success carved into stone. Navy suit, expensive watch, and that smug little smirk that only grew wider when he had an audience. And oh, did he have one. They were at Capri Blue, a rooftop Italian restaurant known for celebrity sightings and surprise proposals. The place buzzed with influencers, executives, and Boston's best dressed. Every table was full. Jason cleared his throat. "Elena," he began, tapping his glass with a fork. Heads turned. Conversations paused. Her heart leapt. Was this really happening? A proposal? Jason stood. "I just wanted to say something important tonight." He placed a hand on her shoulder, like a CEO delivering bad news to an intern. "Elena, you're a good person. Sweet. Kind. But I need someone who fits into my world, a woman with polish. Presence. Someone who doesn't hold me back." The silence cracked like thunder. "I'm ending this. Right now. Please don't make a scene." She blinked. The room didn't spin, it tilted. The waiter who had just arrived with a bottle of wine froze. A woman gasped. Someone across the room snickered. Jason sat back down and calmly picked up his phone, as if he had just ended a business call. Elena didn't cry. She didn't scream. She stood up slowly, brushed the wrinkles from her dress, and said in a clear, measured voice, "Thank you for finally showing me who you are, publicly." And then she walked out of Capri Blue, heels echoing against the marble floor, head high, leaving behind a man who had no idea what was coming. Elena met Jason when he was just a guy with a pitch deck and a lot of confidence. She was 25, working in a shared office space as a freelance branding consultant. He had swagger but no clients. She had ideas and connections. Together, they turned his tech startup from a sketch in a notebook into Langscale, a rising software company with angel investors, feature write-ups, and a small but growing team. Elena wasn't just the girlfriend. She built his brand. The sleek logo? Hers. The investor deck? Her writing. The viral launch strategy that brought in 100K users in a week? Elena's brainchild. But Jason never gave her credit. In meetings, she was introduced as my girlfriend, Elena. In articles, he took the spotlight. When she asked to be listed as co-founder, he said, "It's better if people think it's a one-man show. It keeps the narrative clean." Still, she stayed. Because she loved him. Because she believed in what they were building. Because she thought loyalty would be rewarded. She was wrong. In the days after the restaurant disaster, Elena's phone buzzed nonstop. Not with messages of sympathy, but whispers. "Did you hear about what Jason did at Capri Blue? Elena, are you okay? I just saw it on someone's Instagram story. Girl, that man is dead to me." She didn't respond. Not right away. Instead, she took a week off work and sat at her kitchen table with a notebook, a pot of strong coffee, and a list titled, "Everything I built for him." Every logo. Every copy line. Every brand strategy. Every client she helped him land through her contacts. She went through their emails, saved receipts, screenshots, designs. She remembered the contracts she wrote and the NDAs she signed. And she remembered the one thing Jason never bothered to do. He never made her sign over intellectual rights. Legally, much of Langscale's branding, the public-facing elements that made the company desirable, still belonged to her. And Jason? He was about to launch his biggest round of funding yet.
Perfect, she thought.
Let him raise the stakes. Elena wasn't just heartbroken. She was furious. Not because she had been dumped, she could live with that. But because Jason had treated her like a stepping stone. A disposable rung on his climb to the top. He had humiliated her for sport. In front of strangers. After stealing years of her life and work. And now he was going to stand on stages, raising money off a brand she had built from blood and caffeine?
No.
This wasn't going to be loud revenge. It was going to be precise. Surgical. Lethal. On day 9, Elena sent 3 emails. One to a top-tier IP attorney she had worked with on a previous campaign. Another to a journalist friend at Tech Beacon. And a third to Jason's lead investor, a sharp woman named Miranda Keene who Elena once helped with a rebrand for her fashion app. Subject line: information that may impact your funding round. The body of the email was short. Attached were documents showing Elena's original ownership of Langscale's logo, style guide, and tagline, all used without legal transfer. Followed by time-stamped assets proving she created them before Langscale was even registered as an entity. Then, finally, a polite line. Out of respect for my own reputation and future ventures, I felt it necessary to bring this to your attention before your next investor call. She didn't say more. She didn't need to. Because 3 weeks after Jason Lang stood in a restaurant and tore her down in front of a crowd, he was about to walk into a boardroom where every chair would be turned against him. And Elena? She wasn't done yet. 3 weeks after Jason's cruel public stunt, the polished confidence he wore like a second skin began to fray. The morning of his pitch to Series A investors was supposed to be a victory lap, a glossy presentation followed by celebratory drinks and overflowing praise. Instead, it began with a call from Miranda Keene, the sharpest shark in the tank. Jason, she said coolly over speakerphone as he adjusted his collar in the mirror, we've received documents from a former collaborator, Elena Foster. She claims ownership of key Langscale branding assets. I've reviewed the files with my legal team. If even half of it holds up, your IP is compromised. Jason's smile faltered. That's absurd. She was just helping me out. She never asked for credit. Doesn't matter, Miranda snapped. What matters is she has timestamps, drafts, emails. You didn't protect the transfer of rights. If this hits the press, or worse, if it hits court, your valuation will tank. And I don't bet on sinking ships. The line went dead. Jason stared at himself, suddenly unsure of the man in the mirror. Meanwhile, Elena was across town in her tiny apartment, sipping black coffee from a chipped mug, watching the dominoes fall. She didn't gloat. She didn't smile. Not yet. This wasn't about glee. It was about clarity. About reclaiming her dignity. The press picked up the story by noon. Startup Darling's IP under fire, read one headline. Behind every tech genius is a woman he forgot to pay, read another. Elena's name trended on LinkedIn. The interview she gave Tech Beacon was short, respectful, and razor-sharp. I believe in fairness, she said. I didn't ask for applause. I just wanted what I created to be acknowledged. When that didn't happen, I decided to protect myself. She didn't insult Jason. Didn't drag him. But she didn't defend him either. And that silence spoke louder than any accusation. Jason tried to get ahead of it with a video apology. He posted a clip from his luxury condo, dressed down in a hoodie, trying to look human. There were misunderstandings, he said. We were in love, and sometimes that blurs business lines. But his voice cracked. And Elena? She didn't respond publicly. She didn't need to. She had already said everything she needed to say with evidence. Clients began pulling out of Langscale within 48 hours. Investors paused funding. His own team began to question the future of the company, whispering about his judgment. Jason sent Elena a message that Friday night. I made mistakes.
Can we talk?
Please. She stared at the screen, deleted it. Instead, she opened a new document and began typing. Her own startup idea. Not one built in someone else's shadow. Not a support role. Hers. Entirely hers. But she wasn't doing it to prove a point to Jason. She was doing it for the version of herself that sat in that restaurant 3 weeks ago, humiliated and heartbroken. The woman who didn't cry. The woman who walked out instead of falling apart. That woman had power. And now she had a plan. Across the city, Jason sat alone in his high-rise apartment, doom-scrolling through tweets he couldn't control and news articles he couldn't spin. He hadn't just lost Elena. He'd underestimated her. And now, the woman he dismissed as not polished enough had burned down his empire with a single truth. She was the reason it existed. 3 weeks. That's all it took. 3 weeks to go from humiliated to unstoppable. 3 weeks to end the career of the man who tried to end her in public. Elena didn't want revenge. She wanted freedom. And now, with every step she took away from him, she was becoming the woman she was always meant to be. Unapologetic, brilliant, and finally building a future where no one else held the pen. Elena's apartment was small, 2 rooms and a balcony, but it was finally starting to feel like hers again. The walls no longer echoed with memories of Jason's voice or the phantom sounds of late-night brainstorming sessions that ended with empty promises and tired kisses. Now, her space buzzed with possibility. Sketches were pinned to corkboards, branding concepts scribbled across her whiteboard, and the gentle glow of her laptop screen lit up the beginnings of her next chapter. She named the project Clarity, a quiet nod to what she'd found after Jason's betrayal. It wouldn't be flashy. It wouldn't try to impress anyone. But it would be clean, elegant, and built with intention. A platform that connected small creators with brand strategists and visual designers, something she had always wished existed back when she started her freelance journey. And this time, there would be no boyfriend to take the credit. But healing wasn't linear. There were still days Elena woke up with her jaw clenched, her chest tight. Still moments when she replayed that night at Capri Blue, like a looped scene from a film she couldn't shut off. The look on Jason's face. The sound of chairs scraping the floor as strangers leaned in to watch. The sting of knowing she was less than in his eyes. Those thoughts didn't disappear, but they began to lose power. She saw a therapist. She ran by the river every morning. She started taking control of her body again. Of her voice, her time, her name. One day, while grabbing coffee from a quiet local cafe, she overheard a group of junior designers talking about the Langscale scandal. "You hear Elena Foster starting her own thing?" One of them whispered. "She's like a ghostwriter of half that company. Honestly, she's kind of a legend now." Elena blinked, nearly dropping her cup. She didn't turn around. She just smiled. Legend. She liked the sound of that. Across the city, Jason was unraveling. After the investor fallout, he tried salvaging Langscale with a rushed rebrand. But the new logo looked like a washed-out parody of Elena's original work. The public wasn't buying it. Clients left quietly. The funding dried up. And so did his clout. At networking events, people avoided him. When he walked into meetings, the air shifted, cool, cautious. He wasn't the rising star anymore. He was the guy who burned his own wings trying to fly higher than the woman who helped him build them. And Elena? She wasn't hiding. When her new platform's beta launched, it got picked up by Modern Founder Weekly, the same publication that once praised Jason. Elena Foster, the creative mind behind Boston's quietest tech shakeup, the headline read. Inside, there was a photo of her standing on the balcony of her apartment, arms crossed, sunset light warming her face. The article painted her as sharp, ethical, deeply talented. It highlighted her calm during the chaos. And most of all, it recognized her work, her story. Jason read it alone, on his couch, surrounded by silence. He texted her again. "Read the article. You deserve the spotlight."
"I'm sorry."
"Truly." "This time," she replied. "I know I do. And I don't need your apology. Not anymore." She didn't block him. She didn't lash out. She just left him there, in the quiet emptiness he created. The next week, Clarity's waitlist hit 20,000 users. Elena was invited to speak at a Women in Tech Summit, where she told her story, not as a tale of betrayal, but as a lesson in resilience. She stood on the stage, no longer just a name in someone else's shadow. My biggest mistake, she said, was thinking that loyalty meant silence. That standing behind someone was the same as standing beside them. But I've learned that when someone dims your light, you don't fight for their approval. You build your own sun. The room erupted in applause. And far in the back, a young woman wiped away a tear, realizing she didn't have to stay silent in her own life either. Elena wasn't done growing. She wasn't done healing. But she was finally free. And Jason Lang? He would spend the rest of his career watching the woman he discarded walk through doors he'd never open again. Not because she burned bridges, but because she built her own. Elena's keynote speech at the summit rippled through the tech world like a spark touching dry grass. Clips of her final words, "You build your own sun," circulated online, shared by aspiring designers, burned-out creatives, and women who had been silenced in boardrooms too many times. Overnight, her words became a mantra. Not just for revenge, but for rebirth. She didn't just trend, she inspired. Brands reached out. Podcasts wanted her. VC firms invited her to panels. And Clarity? The waitlist doubled by Monday. Investors began circling, but Elena was cautious. She'd seen what unchecked ambition looked like. She wasn't going to build another empire just to lose herself in it. Jason, meanwhile, couldn't escape her. She was on every feed, every screen. Her name had become a quiet reckoning. People no longer whispered about what he had done. They celebrated what she had become. That silence was worse than any public condemnation. He was no longer feared or hated. He was irrelevant. One evening, Elena sat in her apartment, scrolling through her inbox when a name froze her breath. Lydia Cole. Jason's former head of operations, the woman who had once politely smiled through meetings while Elena was brushed aside. The subject line, "I owe you this." Inside, Lydia wrote, "I should have spoken up years ago. I saw what you did for Langscale. I saw how he erased you. And I was complicit by staying silent. If you're building something new, I'd be honored to help. No ego. No credit. Just good work." Elena stared at the message for a long time. She didn't know what surprised her more, the apology or the fact that she was no longer angry. She replied, "Let's talk." They met 2 days later in a quiet park cafe, the wind rustling through trees as Lydia spoke openly about Jason's manipulation, his constant control, the way he quietly surrounded himself with people who wouldn't challenge him. "I saw him use you," Lydia admitted, "and I convinced myself it wasn't my business. I was wrong." Elena looked at her, eyes soft but clear. "The thing about rebuilding," she said, "is that you get to choose your team this time." And so Lydia joined, not out of guilt, but out of alignment. Because Elena wasn't building something bitter. She was building something better. The momentum grew. Clarity entered beta testing with small creators, local artists, Etsy shop owners, freelance coders, who had never had access to quality branding support. Elena spent hours every day talking to users, refining the platform, ensuring it stayed simple and human. This wasn't about scale. It was about service. And people felt it. One afternoon, after a long session of user feedback reviews, Elena's phone buzzed with a photo from an old mutual friend, someone she hadn't spoken to since the breakup. It was Jason. In a WeWork, seated alone at a community desk, laptop open, head in his hands. The message said, "Saw him there." No assistant. No team. He looked lost. Elena stared at the photo. For a split second, her heart twisted. Not in pity, but in memory. She remembered when they were both nobodies with dreams. When they shared ramen at midnight and made plans on napkins. When he used to smile without agenda. But then she reminded herself, he chose to turn on the one person who truly believed in him. She deleted the photo. No response needed. That same night, Elena attended a small rooftop dinner hosted by a fellow founder. She was surprised to find herself genuinely enjoying it, laughing, talking, sharing ideas. The sun dipped low over the Boston skyline, casting gold over the river, and for the first time in months, she didn't feel the weight of her past. Near the end of the evening, a man named Caleb sat beside her. He was quiet, kind-eyed, and owned a nonprofit that helped fund tech programs in underserved schools. "I've read about clarity," he said, smiling. "You've got something rare, soul and strategy." She laughed softly, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "Thank you. I'm trying to build something that actually matters." "You are." They talked long after the dinner ended. About design, loss, healing. Caleb didn't treat her like a cautionary tale or a celebrity. He didn't ask about Jason. He just saw her. When they parted, he didn't push for her number. He simply said, "I hope we cross paths again." Elena walked home with a strange feeling in her chest.
Peace.
Not because she'd won, but because she had let go. She didn't need Jason to fall in order to rise. But it had happened. And now, she was here, not as someone's ex, not as the girl from that restaurant as 2 weeks later. Clarity launched in full. No press event. No fireworks. Just a quiet email to 50,000 waitlisted users with the subject line, "We're ready for you." Within hours, the platform surged with activity. Designers were matched with small business owners. Freelancers created logos for indie bookstores. Fashion stylists found color palettes that finally reflected their vision, and writers helped coaches tell their stories. There were no algorithms manipulating connections, just intentional, human-centered design. Elena sat in her workspace, watching it unfold in real time. The interface was clean, intuitive, hers. No inflated promises. Just real people finally seen. And it felt like justice. The kind that doesn't come from revenge, but from watching something you built change lives in real time. She didn't post screenshots of success. She didn't need to. Her growth spoke for itself. But not everyone was quiet. On a Thursday morning, while reviewing analytics, Elena's phone buzzed with a notification. Jason had published a blog post. The title? "What I Lost and What I Learned." Curious but guarded, she clicked. It wasn't an apology. Not really. He talked about the pressure of building a company, about how ambition blurred his lines, about how he hurt people he cared about, but he never named her. He called her someone I once built dreams with. The piece read like someone trying to shape a new version of himself, but not quite willing to own the old one. Elena didn't finish it. She closed the tab and turned back to her screen, back to clarity, back to what mattered. That night, she met Caleb again. This time at a bookstore cafe near the river, where he was helping curate a reading event for local teens. He waved when he saw her, that same gentle smile lighting up his face like a lantern in fog. "You came," he said. "I said I might," she teased. "I was hoping might meant yes." They ordered tea and found a spot by the window. The rain had started, soft, steady, but the world felt quiet, not gray. As they talked, Caleb didn't lean into her pain. He didn't ask for the story. He only asked, "What do you want now?" The question landed somewhere deep, because no one had asked her that in a long time. Elena stirred her tea and looked out at the blurred city lights. "I want to build without burning out. I want to be seen for my work without sacrificing my peace. And I want to stop bracing for the next betrayal." Caleb nodded. "Sounds like you're already doing it." There was no grand confession. No sweeping moment. Just ease. And presence. The quiet spark of two people who weren't trying to fix each other, just meet each other where they were. When he walked her home in the rain, he didn't reach for her hand. But when they said goodnight, their eyes lingered. Not in longing, but in understanding. The kind that comes from surviving storms and still having the courage to open the window again. The next day, Elena received a message from someone she least expected, Jason's former CTO, Marcus. He had left Langscale a month ago, fed up with the damage and spin. His message was short, direct. "If you're expanding Clarity, I'd love to be part of it. I believe in what you're doing, and I've learned who not to trust." Elena didn't reply right away. Instead, she looked over Clarity's roadmap. Expansion was coming. She needed a technical partner. And Marcus, though previously silent, had always been fair to her, even when Jason wasn't. She picked up her phone. Let's talk. But on my terms. Her terms. Her team. Her vision. This wasn't about being vindictive. It was about being deliberate. About building something that could outlast betrayal. That afternoon, as the rain cleared, Elena stepped out onto her balcony. The city was soaked and shining, like it had been scrubbed clean of everything stale. She took a deep breath. It didn't smell like pain anymore. It smelled like possibility. Seen, but as Elena Foster. Founder. Creator. Woman becoming whole. Clarity's growth had been slow by tech standards, but Elena preferred it that way. She wasn't chasing explosive headlines or billion-dollar valuations. She wanted trust, not traction. And that trust had begun to take root like something sacred. Within 6 months, Clarity became the go-to platform for creators who were tired of being overlooked. For the underdogs. For the quiet builders. The makers who didn't have viral stories or shiny investor decks, but had heart, vision, and talent. Elena oversaw every major decision. She hired intentionally, mostly women, many of them with stories like hers. Not out of spite, but out of knowing. Knowing how it felt to be dismissed. To be spoken over. To be told, you're lucky to be here. Now, she created a place where no one had to feel lucky just to be treated fairly. One morning, she walked into the new Clarity office, a sunlit co-working space they'd finally been able to call their own, and paused at the mural on the entry wall. It had been painted by one of Clarity's earliest users, a deaf artist from Colorado whose business had doubled since joining the platform. It read, "You are not too small. They just built the rooms too narrow." Elena ran her fingers gently across the edge of the words. This was it. Not vengeance. Not applause. Purpose. And yet, the past had a way of slipping through cracks. She found herself outside of Capri Blue one evening. Alone. Unintentionally. She had taken a wrong turn walking home from a charity panel. She hadn't been back since that night. The lights were still warm inside. The same polished floors. The same quiet hum of wealth. She stood there for a moment, considering walking in. Just to prove to herself that she could. But she didn't. Not because she was afraid, but because she no longer needed the restaurant that broke her to validate the woman she had become. She turned and walked away, each step light, each breath steady. Across town, Jason had taken a job at a consultancy. Not a bad job, but not what he once was. The calls had stopped coming. The reputation, once sparkling, was dull. And though he still tried to talk about lessons learned, most people only remembered how he fell. He tried dating again. Tried reclaiming some part of his old charm. But something had shifted. Women asked more questions now. Business partners demanded transparency. His name no longer opened doors, it opened questions. He messaged Elena one last time. No drama. No plea.
Just a single line.
You didn't just end my career. You taught me what I never learned in success. She didn't reply. Some chapters close without punctuation. Elena's story wasn't about Jason anymore. It was about mornings where she woke up not bracing for disappointment. About long walks with Caleb, who had slowly, carefully, become something beautiful in her life. About laughter in the office. About new users signing up every day. About reading feedback from creators who wrote things like, "You made me believe in myself again. I finally feel seen. Thank you for building this." She didn't need revenge. She had impact. Not the kind that screams. The kind that builds quietly. Like roots. The night before Clarity's one-year anniversary, Elena stood on the rooftop of the new workspace her team had just moved into. A modest but bright, plant-filled space overlooking the Boston skyline. The lights of the city blinked like quiet applause. There was no celebration planned, no champagne tower, no press. Just her thoughts, and the life she had built with care, piece by piece. 12 months ago, she'd walked out of a restaurant with the sting of betrayal burning in her lungs. And now, She stood taller than she ever had, untethered from the man who once tried to define her value with a sentence. Inside the building behind her, a framed photo hung in the hallway, a collage of user stories, artists, writers, designers, small business owners. Under each photo was one line: real people, real stories, real clarity. This was the legacy she wanted. Not to be remembered as the woman dumped in a restaurant, or the ex who ended someone's career, but as someone who began hers. Caleb joined her quietly on the rooftop, carrying 2 cups of tea. He didn't say anything at first, just stood beside her, offering warmth. "I saw the numbers," he said eventually. "You hit 100,000 users." "I did." She smiled softly. "Feels surreal. You deserve every bit of it." She took the cup, letting the steam touch her face. "Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if Jason hadn't done what he did. If we'd stayed together. If I never left Lang Scale." Caleb looked at her for a long moment. "Then you'd still be giving your brilliance to someone who couldn't see it. And the world would have missed out on this." Elena nodded. "Maybe I needed to be broken like that, to become clear about who I really was." They sat in silence for a few minutes, listening to the city breathe. There was peace in it. Not because everything was perfect, but because she wasn't waiting for someone else to make it better anymore. The next morning, her inbox was flooded. A major design blog had named Clarity Startup of the Year for Impact. A renowned VC had written an unsolicited article titled, "The Future of Ethical Tech Has a Face," and it's Elena Foster. Applications to join Clarity tripled in a day. And with it came something else. An email from a woman named Maya, a marketing intern at Jason's new consultancy. "Hi, Elena. I know you don't know me. I just wanted to say thank you. I'm in this industry because of women like you. I read your story last year when I was thinking of dropping out of design school. But you made me believe that I didn't have to take less just because I was new or young or female. I hope I can build something with even half your integrity one day." Elena read the email 3 times. Then she replied, "Maya, you don't have to wait for one day. The fact that you see it now means you're already building something right.
Trust that.
And keep going." She hit send and sat back. That was the moment. Not the investor write-up. Not the blog award. Not even the 100,000 users. But this, the ripple. The echo of her choice touching someone else's decision to stay in the game. A year ago, she was a woman broken at a table while people watched and said nothing. Today, she was a woman whose quiet courage had sparked 1,000 others. Jason would be a footnote in her story, a necessary fracture, but not the reason she rose. She rose because she knew, even in that humiliating moment, that she was not small.
She was not weak.
She was not his. She was hers. Entirely. Elena looked at the wall in her office where she'd written her first motto the day she launched Clarity. In permanent marker. No edits. They can take credit. They can take space. But they can never take what was born in fire. And fire? It built her. She closed her laptop, walked out into the hallway, and greeted her team. There was work to do. But this time it was her work. Her name. Her pace. No more proving. Only becoming.